Drum and bass didn't appear out of nowhere. It rose from the concrete and speaker stacks of the UK's inner cities in the late 80s and early 90s. A fusion of black British sound system culture, rave euphoria, and the restless spirit of experimentation. Its roots lie in jungle, a genre born at the intersection of breakbeat, hardcore, dub, dancehall, and hip-hop. Let's have a brief look into the history of drum and bass. The story of drum and bass doesn't begin with samplers or breakbeats, it begins with culture. In the late 20th century Britain, especially in multicultural cities like London, Birmingham and Bristol, a distinct underground sound began to emerge from the convergence of diasporic communities and British youth culture. Jamaican immigrants brought sound system culture, heavy bass, toasting MCs, and a love for tactile, body-moving frequencies. Alongside this came American hip-hop, funk, and electro, as well as the growing UK rave scene in the late 80s, blending ecstasy-fueled euphoria with breakbeats and DIY pirate radio ethos. Long before breakbeats and aim and edits defined the poles of drum and bass, it was dub that laid the groundwork, sonically, spiritually, and culturally. Originating in Jamaica and evolving through UK sound system culture, dub introduced the concept of bass as the emotional core of music. It treated the studio as an instrument, layering reverb, delay, and space into tracks that felt physically and immersive. This bass-first ethos profoundly shaped the early rave and jungle scenes. Meanwhile, the role of the MC evolved into a central figure in raves and pirate radio. More than just a musical influence, dub was a philosophy, tactile, hypnotic, and communal. So without dub, there wouldn't be no jungle and certainly no drum and bass as we know today.
The Josh Shaka sirens and all that, and that drew in other people, especially black working class people. People that originally, they didn't want to hear that music, saying, oh, you lot are playing devil music. Now, they wanted to come to the parties.
That is where the actual jungle culture of it started, because more black people come to the event because it had more soul.
By the end of the 80s, rave music was mutating at speed. Hardcore breakbeat, fast, chaotic, euphoric, began taking over illegal warehouses and fields. The tempo accelerated, the samples got darker and the bass got deeper. At the time, pirate radio ruled the airwaves. Stations like Cool FM and Rush FM broadcasted a raw, frenetic sound to thousands of listeners, bypassing the mainstream and building their own underground infrastructure.
It was almost like there was so many stations and they were proving hard to track down, and they were all moving locations slightly, so it's cool. It's like it's changed now, you know, not as many drum and bass. I think the Cool FM is probably still going, but it's the underground, like, radio stations have always had their finger on the pulse musically within, like, the younger generation within London.
I'm a junglist.
Young producers sampled James Brown drum breaks, spliced them with reggae bass lines and added sped-up diver vocals or rugger MC shouts. The result was chaotic, euphoric and unmistakably new. It became known as jungle.
That era onwards, every artist, you know, if they're breakbeat or jungle or anything with that kind of vibe in, if you talk to them about who was an early influence, it will stem back to them.
Chile pele pelang woy, woy, chile pele pelang woy, Raga Twins, chile pele pelang woy, woy, chile pele pelang woy, Raga Twins.
When it first started, it wasn't called jungle. It wasn't we came to shut up and dance, made the music and it started. It was jungle. We didn't even have no name for it.
It's in trouble when we get together.
After a while, we started going to raves and they'll play a tune and we'd chat lyrics and it would get wheel up or pull up. When we told the selector to pull up the tune one time, he's still playing the tune. We're like, pull up the tune. He's like, what do you mean pull up the tune? We're like, play it again from the top. He's like, what? Rewind it, rewind. So that's how we brought our influence of reggae over to the dance.
By the early 90s, jungle had become modern music. It was a movement. Driven by multicultural crews across London, Birmingham and Bristol, the sound was a reflection of urban Britain, complex, hybrid and fast-moving. Clubs like AWOL and Rage served as its temples, while white labels flew from cutting rooms to dance floors in days. But even in its most militant form, jungle had the seeds of evolution. Beneath the rawness were atmospheres. Beneath the gunshots and rewinds, a hunger for musical death. That's where drum and bass began to emerge, not as a replacement, but as a refinement, a pivot towards structure, spaciousness, and sound design. By '94, jungle had become a national phenomenon, both celebrated and misunderstood. Media hype framed it as violent, chaotic, but within a scene, it was freedom. It was DIY futurism, streetwise and sophisticated, political and playful, unfiltered and alive.
For me, it was more of a vibe. You know, it was like a movement.
Yeah, we had our own thing going on. It was DIY. We built our own thing for ourselves, by ourselves.
It was a culture in itself. It was a family.
It was magic, you know. I don't think I realised it at the time. It was just the norm.
Wheeling, come again, please. Absolutely T for tremendous.
The Americans have hip-hop. They've got to be proud of that for the rest of their life. And we've got jungle, drum and bass. We're proud of that, you know, till we die.
But as jungle grew, it also began to split. One path would move toward greater musicality and space. Atmospheric jungle, intelligent drum and bass. Another would veer into harder, colder territory, textured, minimalism, sonic precision. The next evolution was already underway. By the mid-90s, the rave euphoria was fading, a new seriousness was settling in. Out of that shift emerged the early blueprint for what would soon be known as drum and bass, a genre more redefined in tone, more melodic in atmosphere and obsessed with the mechanics of rhythm and bass.
Jungle, drum and bass, you know, it's all part of the same tree.
As producers like Groove Rider, Doc Scott and Photek pushed the sound further, stripping back the rugger influence, tightening the drum edits and introducing cleaner, colder productions. The music evolved into something more redefined and futuristic. This transition from jungle to drum and bass wasn't a clean break, but a gradual shift, less about abandoning the past, more about refining the future. Drum bass retained the energy and urgency of jungle, but pushed it into new sonic territory, more melodic, technical, spacious, abstract, and often deeply cinematic. It was about a journey. Goldie's Timeless was a revelation, a 22-minute title track that opened with soaring vocals, live strings, and ethereal pads before dropping into rolling breaks. A statement that drum and bass could be cinematic, even symphonic. It redefined what was possible in electronic music and brought the underground to major labels without diluting its essence. At the same time, metalheads, the label Goldie founded with Chemistry and Storm, became ground zero for this new era. Their Sunday nights at Blue Note and Hoxton were legendary. A crucible of dubplates, dark corners and future sound. It was there that styles collided, ideas exchanged and tracks tested in front of the most discerning crowd in London. Drum and bass wasn't just a genre, it was becoming a philosophy, one that prized innovation, sonic discipline and emotional resonance. It was breakbeat science, and the world was beginning to take notice.
Goldie was a massive part to do with moving this music on.
We didn't think that anybody could chart or make a proper success of themselves. We're big fish, but we're in a small pond. He stepped outside of that pond and went, you know, to the mainstream and said, you know, this is my underground shizzle. He received critical acclaim for what he did.
I remember Goldie putting out his album and it wasn't like full of pop hits. He'd put out what was his true sound.
As drum and bass moved into the late 90s, the genre exploded in multiple directions. What had once been a unified scene began to diverge. Not out of conflict, but out of creative ambition. New styles were forming, new aesthetics were emerging. The scene no longer had one center, it had many. A new wave of producers was injecting emotion and musicality back into the form. Enter intelligent drum bass. LTJ Bookham's Logical Progression series offered a lush, ambient counterpoint to Techstep's style. Tracks like Horizons, Music, and Demon's Theme fused jazz chords, soft pads, and rapid-fire breaks, proving that speed and subtlety could coexist. Labels like Hospital Records and Good Looking carved out sonic identities of their own. Meanwhile, Digital and Spirit crafted dubwise rollers, Source Direct embraced noir atmospheres, and artists like Dillinger, Lemon D and Bad Company created floor-destroying anthems that balanced funk with brute force. The diversity of drum and bass had never been greater, but this splintering wasn't division. It was evolution. It showed the genre's elasticity, its ability to host contradiction, to be cerebral and savage, deep and danceable. And in the moment drum and bass stopped being one thing, it became a universe. By the end of the 90s, drum and bass had begun to stretch beyond the rave, not just louder or darker, but deeper and more musical. While LTJ Bookham was refining the atmospheric aesthetics, another key figure brought a different kind of musicality to the table, Adam F. In '97, the UK producer and multi-instrumentalist released his debut album Colours, a milestone that proved drum and bass could transcend the club to become a full listening experience. On the other hand, drum and bass didn't just evolve because of musical taste, it evolved through machines, mistakes, and malicious craft. Behind the genre's sharpest edges and deepest bass lines lies a culture of experimentation, where engineering and expression go hand in hand. One of the genre's most iconic innovators was Goldie, not just for his vision, but for cutting-edge time-stretching techniques, slowing and speeding samples without altering pitch, creating breakbeats that felt liquid and ghostly. This method, reshaping the aim and break into emotional framework, was foundational. Goldie and Playford didn't just make tracks, they crafted environments.
Goldie used time stretching for the first time ever.
We're talking about things that I haven't done yet.
There was a lot of equipment in the studio, and I'd seen a HF harmonizer. The Daddy.
Terminator is out there.
By misusing an old piece of guitar kit, Goldie invented a revolutionary technique called time stretching.
If you want to play a guitar at one pitch, you can play it, but then if you want to sound like it's 10 guitars, you can have guitars playing pitch down and guitars playing up. But they're playing at the same time. So if I put breakbeat through that, digital breakbeat, I don't know, no one's ever done it. I'm like, let's wire it up.
In that moment, the pitched up sounds of jungle became the serious sounds of drum and bass.
We were running this breakbeat, it was the funky drummer on constant loop, and I remember holding it. And Mark's going, check this out, it's a lot more. Let's try. And it was just like it was like every hair on every follicle on my entire body just stood up, and it was like, what the hell have we just done?
But drum and bass evolved far beyond Goldie's studio. Producers armed with Akai samplers sliced the aim and break into ghost snares and shuffle grooves, crafting a rhythm you could feel. And dubplates ruled the underground. Exclusive A-states passed from DJ to DJ, forging status and secrecy. And mixing became art. DJs like Bookham and Doc Scott blended pads, textures, and emotion into long-form journeys. And it was always built for soundsystem, for bass pressure in dark rooms and warehouse resonance. Drum and bass wasn't just fast, it was tactile, spatial, and deeply engineered. A genre where machines told stories. By the turn of the millennium, drum and bass had planted roots far beyond the UK. The sound had spread clubs in Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Moscow, and Wellington. With the internet breaking down borders, drum and bass no longer belonged to London, it belonged to anyone with ears and open software. A wave of new artists helped redefine the sound again. Liquid funk emerged as the genre's warmest face, soulful, melodic, and steeped with musicality. Artists like High Contrast, Caliber, and Makoto delivered tunes that glided rather than punched, often borrowing from house, soul, and jazz. Tracks like Return or Forever, or Even If, reintroduced vocals, chords, and longing into the mix. The role of radio and DJ culture remained critical. BBC Radio 1 gave slots to Fabio and Grooverider. Online platforms like Dogs on Acid and B&B Arena became virtual meeting grounds for heads across continents. And YouTube's emergence would soon preserve and propagate a decade's worth of dubplates. The 2000s proved one thing: drum and bass was no longer an underground curiosity, it was a global movement. By the late 2000s, drum and bass was splittering into subgenres just as the music industry itself was shifting. The rise of CDJs and USBs and digital platforms like Beatport and SoundCloud disrupted vinyl-based scenes. A culture once rooted in dubplates and scarcity now faced a flood of digital access. Iconic labels struggled, good-looking records slowed down after LTJ Bookham's journey inwards. Moving shadow and renegade hardware reduced output or shut down altogether. The so-called vinyl crisis, rising costs, fewer pressing plants hit hard. For a genre built on wax, this was more than economic, it was cultural. And yet, amid the confusion, new voices began to rise. Producers who embraced digital tools, connected globally, and brought fresh perspectives to a sound once feared to be stagnating. The fragmentation of drum and bass, while challenging, would also sow the seeds for a new generation. The next chapter was being written. By the 2010s, drum and bass had nothing to prove, but plenty to still explore. A new generation raced on broadband and DAW, starting digging deep into the genre's past while forging new paths forward.
I started digging through Discogs and rock, would set up channels on YouTube, just uploading loads of jungle, to be coming home from school every day and basically just trying to school myself, trying to take in as much of this as possible. And I was doing that, and then eventually I just had this desire to sort of want to get involved in a way.
The revival of jungle aesthetics became a major force. Artists like Omnunit, Sully and Tam Reaper embraced chopping breaks, dubwise vibes and the raw energy of early 90s raves, but with modern production precision. At the same time, producers like D-Bridge and Skeptical pushed the boundaries of minimalism and space. Exit Records championed halftime, ambient textures and the grey zones between drum and bass, footwork and hip-hop. Drum and bass was deconstructing itself again, questioning its own form in real time. Veterans returned, Bookham toured again, Goldie dropped albums, and old school raves sold out crowds spanning generations. So the evolution of drum and bass is still taking place, and it didn't fade, it mutated. Because it was never just a tempo, it was sound design as language, technology as an instrument, a culture built on pressure, memory, and reinvention.